these concepts of bittul and yesh, and that only applies within created, after in the process of creation. As relative to creator. So anyway, the difference between being wise versus acquiring wisdom is wise is an internal definition, which points to the direction of who the person really is. And again, the Mishnah is asking who acquired wisdom. How do you know if someone acquired wisdom? That's not the question. Ben Zoma begins the Mishnah by asking who is wise. What's the definition of a truly wise person? And he answers, he who learns from everyone. This is an internal state of being versus a relative external wisdom that streams into this person. And what's the difference? If for whatever reason, one or another, the person forgets the wisdom that he acquired, does that make him less wise? If being wise requires me to have a certain amount of wisdom in my mind, then yeah, if I forgot it, then yeah, maybe I'm going to lose my wise status. It's like money. Sometimes in these Forbes lists and everything, it says they used to be the richest, but he lost X amount, and now he is not the richest. To be truly wise is an internal definition, is the way that we perceive the world, the way that we perceive ourselves, and that's where bittul comes in, because wisdom, chokhmah, Ezo Chacham, is aligned with the divine attribute of Chokhmah, wisdom, the first of the 10 attributes. And the one, Koach Ma, as Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, the word Chokhmah, wisdom, is a composite of two words, Koach Ma, the power of what? In other words, potential. A truly wise person emanates from the attribute of wisdom within their soul, bittul, nullification. Seeing that every aspect of creation has the potential to reveal God. And someone who has that as the internal definition, recognizes that, then you could learn from everyone at all times with all people. So that's wisdom. We're going to move forward now. The next question that Ben Zoma posed in the beginning of chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot is, Ezeu Gibor, who is truly heroic? And again, Ben Zoma answers, Hakovesh et Yisro, someone who subdues his inclination. What does that mean? From the external world's perspective of what strength is, what true heroism is, well, if someone is able to do 100 push-ups or 100 pull-ups, well, that person is very strong. If a person is able to outrun someone, outdo someone with valiancy, that person is a hero. But once again, Pirkei Avot gives us a view from above, beyond the letter of the law. Beyond the letter of the law, as we explained several times, means to look at the universe, at the world, and more specifically in one's own particular world, from God's perspective. So what characterizes, what defines a truly strong person? From the world's perspective, again, it's how much strength I'm able to reveal in relative position to others around me. If I'm able to excel in relatively to all those around me, that makes me stronger than them. But once again, this is an external definition, because this strength, this definition of strength, only emanates from comparing and contrasting me versus others around me. So if I could outdo them, then surely I am strong, and that makes him weaker than me. If I could do 100 push-ups and he could only do 30 push-ups, well, I'm very strong. If I could bench press, if I could run marathons, well, this person is really has to. Okay. But again, this definition, this external definition, bears essential flaws to it. Because that definition is an approximate definition, approximate to my position within the schematics of those around me. If somebody comes around and I was until now held the world record, and now somebody comes and does it double, well, that makes me now weaker than them. Now they're the strong ones. Or if I got a little older and I can't do the same amount of lifting, etc., well, then for sure I'm not strong anymore. Remember when I came once to the Atria, right after my father passed away. And there was a woman, I remember this is one of the greatest lessons I learned. There was a woman over there who just came to the Atria, was just reluctantly brought to reside in the Atria. This woman, being, I believe, approximately 95 years old or something to that extent, maybe 91, whatever, but she had the spunk of a teenager. And for her, being trapped in the Atria in her mind was the end of life. And she was put there reluctantly. Her husband passed away. Her health was fading. She was diagnosed with diabetes, and therefore as she told me, she was a swim exercise instructor in the JCC or the Y, whatever it is. And the doctors forbid her now to do this. At least she gets a scrape in the pool and chas v'shalom. So now her health is fading. She can no longer do what she really loved doing. And now she only has her memories of her life. But as far as she's concerned now, this is it. This is the end of life. And I said, well, are you able to live now? She says, no, I can't. A, I lost my husband. That in itself is, unfathomable. B, I can't do what I love to do most, which is, number one, painting. She loved painting. She was an artist. But I asked her, why can't you paint now? She says, because it reminds me of my husband, because we used to paint together. So I can't do it. I can't bring myself to pick up a brush. And also, to add insult to injury, I can no longer teach my swim exercise classes. What's the point of living? Says, I ruminate over the days bygone, and now I look at myself today, and it's just not the same. It happened to be just about a week and a half after my father passed away. And I didn't know what to answer this woman. I've never been in that position. I can't pretend to have been in that position enough to give her an encouraging word. So what do you do when this happens? You turn to Hashem. My help will come from Hashem. So I asked Hashem, give me the ability to say the right things to the right people at the right time in the right manner. And then the idea of my father demonstrating to me a very powerful lesson just popped into my head. When I first came to America, our family came to America, it was around 85, Sukkot 85. And I remember the first several year, my father would take us into Manhattan, to show us America. I remember one time, earlier on, maybe it was somewhere in the first year, I remember we were walking by one of the electronic stores in the city. As you remember, in the olden days, 40 years ago, every store in the city was an electronic store, and what would they probably display in their window? This television, Zenith television, and this, whatever. And we were walking by one of the, I believe Nobody Beats a Whiz, or one of those stores. Could have been Crazy Eddie's. Remember that? Crazy Eddie's. Prices are insane. Remember that? Anyway, and those televisions were on 24 hours a day. It was constant. And as we were walking by, one of the televisions was showing a spaceship launch. NASA's was, I don't know if it was happening at that point or before that, but nevertheless, it was a spaceship being launched. I've never seen a spaceship in my life. And my father points out a very interesting phenomenon. He says, "Do you see that spaceship on the television?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Do you know how tall it really is?" I said, "No, I've never seen it." He points to one of the buildings on that block. He says, "It's just as tall as this building. It's pretty tall. It's a high riser." I said, "Wow." He says, "But once the spaceship launches, as it starts moving from one atmosphere to the next, it has to start shedding different components. First one fuel tank, and then another fuel tank, and then the thrust. And by the time it actually gets to out of orbit, it is just a pod. A fraction of the size of what it was before it launched into space." And I said, "Wow, why? Such a magnificent..." I loved building. I loved Lego, and I used to pretend to make spaceships and all kinds of stuff. So the bigger and the more elaborate, the cooler it looks. It says, why would it do that? It's so much cooler when it's... Father says, well, because each one of the components are there to serve a function and a purpose in launching this spaceship in our orbit. Each part is there for a specific part of the journey. And once that component is no longer necessary, then it becomes dead weight. And not only it's not functional to hold down to it, it actually will chaz v'shalom draw it back, the spaceship back into gravity. And chaz v'shalom, if it doesn't let go of it, it could crash. That's what my father told me. And in that moment when I was speaking to this woman, this idea popped into me. Yes, every part of your life was absolutely monumental and phenomenal, and Baruch Hashem, you should celebrate it. However, all of those parts of your life brought you here now. And this is where you're at now. If we look at what we had and what we no longer have, Then prior to having, before I was able to do exercising class and everything, so I was strong. And now that I can't do it, well, now I'm weak. But once again, over here, Ben Zoma is defining the internal definition of true strength. And true strength is not in relative position to what was or to anyone around you. It's an essential base definition of who you are. And that's why Ben Zoma explains that true strength isn't in relative proximity to those around you, or in relative position to other strengths or weaknesses, because that could fluctuate. But as Ben Zoma explains, HaKovesh et Yitzro, who subdues his inclination. What makes a person essentially strong, essentially valiant, is their ability to subdue their inclination. In other words, it's not how I am able to overcome others, but rather how I'm able to subdue my own inclination, how I respond to myself, not how I react to others outside of me. And a very important part understanding emanates from this, which is that in order to remain strong, I don't have to chaz v'shalom subdue anyone outside of me. I don't have to prove myself to anyone outside of me in order to be strong. When someone defines their strength based on external circumstance, then if someone comes along stronger than them, then we're going to have an issue. Because being stronger than me ultimately deflates my sense of strength. And that could be a source of contention.
So you just measure it against yourself, that's it.
Right. It's who you are. There was a very famous radio interview, a Chabadnik in Eretz Yisrael in Ramat Gan. His name was Moti Gal. And once he interviewed one of Israel's champions, I believe, in wrestling. And he asked him, what is your motivation when you go out to a match? Do you want to pin them? Do you want to outdo them? Outmaneuver them? He says, no, none of that. That's not my motivation. What motivates me is that today I'll be better than I was yesterday. Whatever I was yesterday, I got to become better today. I got to be better today. In other words, my biggest contender is myself. So we're seeing that strength from Pirkei Avot, just like wisdom, is not something that's acquired from the outside, because if it's something that could be acquired from the outside, it could also be taken by the outside. It could be lost over time. And if one has strength and then as they get older, and their body is no longer functioning like a 20-year-old, well then the person is going to now be deeming themselves to be weak. We were at the Atria last week or 2 weeks ago, and we spoke about a very interesting letter that the Rabbi responded to someone who reached, I believe, their 60s, and he wrote a letter to the Rabbi bemoaning that I can no longer go out dancing in chatunot and marriages and bar mitzvah. You know, in Crown Heights and in Brooklyn, there's literally a celebration every single night. Sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them. And it's customary for people to just, random people to walk in and dance. It's a mitzvah after all. So he bemoans that he can't go and dance in the simchot like he used to when he was younger. His body doesn't allow. Now externally, this is, of course, a reason to be sad. You're confronting your mortality, your own limitation. You know, that's the way the ego perceives things. But of course, the Rebbe gives us God's perspective. What did the Rebbe write? He said, well, it might be true. Now I'm paraphrasing. But while it might be true that you could no longer dance like you used to, but who says at this age that's your function? Why don't you look at yourself as a person who lives 60 plus years, Baruch Hashem, who's acquired so much life experience? And as the Mishnah teaches us, Ein hachacham ela kebal hanisayon. Somebody who's truly wise is someone who has experience of life. The wisdom that you've gained over all of your life now affords you the ability to accomplish things so much more readily. And that's your function in this stage of life. You now have the ability to move things and maneuver things and respond to things so much more readily, and therefore you could build so much more quicker. That's your strength. It's an internal definition strength, not one that is contingent about external circumstances. Furthermore,
it's hard to internalize. Conceptually, I understand, and I rejoice over it.
What's the hard part?
The limitations.
What limitation?
The limitations that they come with age, with time, and that's what it is.
You know, while I understand that, and it makes sense, and there is a part of our consciousness, the natural soul consciousness, is that, we recognize that. But, there's what's in the internet, there's a search engine called Google, right? If you put the word strength, let's just say in Google, you know how many results you're going to have in 1 second?
Yeah.
In the millions, if not more. 99.9% of those results are not applicable to what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So now, in order to refine this, in order to get a better result, what do you have to do? You have to refine the search. So now you put essential strength. So now from the tens of millions, you're going to have maybe 1 million. But still, most of it is not applicable. So now what do you have to do? You have to refine the search further. Essential godly strength. Now you're going to limit the results to maybe 1,000. Then you say, from the aspect of Pirkei Avot, and maybe you have 1 or 2. Now, if we compare and contrast, initially what we had was millions of results. And now we only have one. Did that limit? Did that limit or did it reveal? So you see, what seems to be a limitation to us, while it might be true, yeah, because before there was so much more, and now there's not so much more. Is that a limitation or is that a definition? Yeah, while we get older, the body isn't as strong as it used to be when we were in our 20s. But once again, the Rabbi says, who said it needs to be? Perhaps if a person was 60, 70 years old and could go dancing every night, maybe they would squander that precious wisdom that they acquired on going dancing every single night and just partying all the time. And so the question would come out, and a real question would come out then. Then all that wisdom that we've gained throughout life, what was the purpose of it? Just arbitrary? Just to say, so I could say I have it on my bookshelf? What would be the point of that? So yeah, and it doesn't mean, chas v'shalom, we shouldn't take care of our physical health, our mental well-being. Chas v'shalom, God forbid, a person always has to work out and work on their their mind's agility and so on and so forth. However, we're talking about essential definitions here. A compass, a GPS into yourself. And so yeah, while the body becomes weaker than it was in its younger days, but that's not a limitation. That allows definition to occur. So while the natural soul, the animal soul, will always focus on what I had and what I no longer have,
That's true.
the godly soul looks at, well, what is here now? What's available right now? And that's your service. Because again, from the point of the definition that Ben Zoma gives in the Mishnah, if my strength was contingent of in relative position and proximity to being stronger than those around me, and now all of a sudden someone comes along and is stronger than me, well, that automatically makes me feel weak. Think about the psychology of this, the back and forth that people have because they don't want to feel weak in front of someone. How much turmoil, how much contention, how much anxiety does a person have inside where they say, well, I want it, I don't have, and so on and so forth. I had, and now I don't have. Versus, what Ben Zoma is giving us is a holistic, organic, godly approach to strength. It's not based on anyone else outside of me. It's me. And if this is what I have right now, then that's my strength. The big question is, how am I utilizing it? How is it being streamed? And that's why Ben Zoma says, "Hakoveshet Yisro." Someone is able to subdue their inclination. That's strength. In modern jargon, self-mastery. Self-mastery is the definition of strength. Not overcoming others. And that's because, and again, as we spoke about in last week's class, he gives a definition. He gives a definition via a verse. Someone who is able to be patient is more valiant, stronger than someone who is able to conquer a city. Because conquering a city, while it requires tactical strength and maneuvering and so on and so forth, but it doesn't necessarily represent inner strength. As we looked at last week, we find many revolutionaries who come into the world and want to change the world. We're going to the revolution and so on and so forth. What happens once they conquer the tyranny and so on and so forth? What happens then? They become themselves the tyrants. They become themselves the oppressors. Why? Because conquering outside of yourself doesn't require inner strength. It requires tactic. You know, we spoke about it last week, the mob, especially the mafia, the Havdil, especially the founding fathers of the mob, like Luciano, Mayor Siegel, Mayor Lansky, Binyamin Halevi, Siegel, Bugsy Siegel. You know, when there's a shul in Manhattan, in the Lower East Side, there's a plaque for their yortzeits, because they belonged there. Anyway, but when you analyze them, these people set up networks, international networks. If any of them would be CEOs, there would be international CEOs. But did that show their inner strength? No, just the opposite. That didn't come from inner strength. That came as all of them grew up impoverished. All of them grew up in a circumstance where they didn't have opportunities. So they decided, if we don't have opportunity, we're going to go and take our opportunities. This strength was born out of a deficiency. And therefore, it was always marked by a deficiency. So no matter how strong they were, no matter how comfortable they were, no matter how big they became, it didn't matter. Anyone who came and even remotely opposed them, they were gone. There's nothing to talk about. Because I can't have somebody stronger than me here. I just can't. This is not a point of strength. This is actually a deficiency, which over time will consume and ravage and consume the person who bears this quote-unquote strength.
Would you be able to give examples, concrete examples of self-work that needs to be done?
A what?
Self-work that needs to be done.
Yeah, we're going to get there. So let's look at three assessments, or three tiers of this of Ben Zoma's assessment. Who is strong? Hakovesh et Yisro, someone who subdues his inclination. First of all, number one, you don't have to be, or one doesn't have to be stronger than the other in order to be strong. It's enough that you work on yourself that reveals your inner strength. It's number one. Number two, and this is so important to emphasize, Ben Zoma doesn't say someone who conquers his inclination. Rather, someone who subdues the inclination. And parenthetically, and maybe this should be number 2. Parenthetically, or maybe not so parenthetically, maybe just, it doesn't say, Ben Zoma doesn't say someone who conquers their evil inclination. It says someone who conquers their inclination. Subdues their inclination, not their evil inclination. Which inclination? Any inclination, even the good ones. Even a good inclination must be subdued. Such as, imagine a girl comes from school and shows her mommy, look, I got 100 on my test. And the mom looks at her and says, wow. You see, if only you applied yourself like this in other subjects, you could definitely, and you keep on bringing the 60s and 50s.
Yeah,
and you could and you could do so much. You see, you could do it. Now, over here, the mother meant good. This wasn't evil. She was right. She was just trying to demonstrate to her daughter that, in fact, while she has this negative self-defeatist conversation that I'm not good enough, I will never be able to master this subject, there's no way. The mother just wanted to point out to the daughter the obvious truth, you're good enough. But how does the daughter take it? She takes it and she's shattered inside. Because what I did wasn't good enough. Because there's no celebrating the now. And so what? Was this a Yetzer Hara? No. This was a Yetzer Tov. The mother really did this out of the love for the daughter.
Something away.
But this is what Ben Zoma says, HaKovesh es Yisro's inclination. Not your evil inclination, any inclination. In other words, yeah, maybe you should say this, but who said you should speak about this now? Maybe this is important, but who says for now? And who says you need to? You know, what was missing over here, for example? We're speaking about it in our relationship class. There's a universe of a difference between Chesed and Tiferet.
And what?
Between kindness, love, and empathy. Here, the mother was being kind. Really. She was demonstrating her love for her daughter. I want you to be the best. And not because I want, because you need to. And I believe in you. And here's the evidence. Your test right now, this 100, is the evidence that of course you could do it. That's kindness. But what it's not is empathetic. That's not what the daughter needs right now. That's not going to motivate her. You want to speak about that? Find another time. Right now, celebrate this moment. HaKovesh et Yisro means subdue any inclination. In other words, it shouldn't just run forth. It shouldn't just be, well, it's a good thing, let's go with it. Subdue it, taper it, filter it, according to what needs to be done by you, not what you want to do. Now, what you need to do, what you're needed to do. Which requires self-mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to bring light, and I want to this, and empower. Yeah, that's very nice. It's very important. But what are you needed for right now? In other words, over here, you have to actually, as it were, subdue yourself. Let go of my ego. Remember that commercial?
Let go of my ego.
Sorry, is this similar to intent in certain aspects? Maybe with speech?
Intent, this is the intent that it's a process that the intent has to go through. The intent emanates from you. It doesn't say, the Mishnah doesn't say, hakovesh et atzmo. The Mishnah doesn't say someone who subdues themselves. It says someone who subdues their inclination. In other words, the inclination is not you. The intent emanates from you. The inclination is an expression of your mission. You have to taper it. You have to filter it, subdue it.
So it's basically, think before you speak.
Well, no. I'm sorry, I didn't say that correctly. I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. It's not think before you speak. Because the animal soul can also think in order to gain what it wants. In other words, it could think like a child, I want candy. I don't want to be here right now, so let me give you a reason. I was watching the other day a child like, mommy. And mom's like, I'm busy. No, mommy. And then I said, what was that? It's like, why are you being like this? And he says, oh no, I have to be somewhere very important tomorrow, so I have to go now. I said, oh, hold on one second. What are you saying? What has to do with tomorrow? All of a sudden now, and before when you were playing with your friends and you didn't want to go when your father told you to leave. Over there, it's okay because you didn't think that. Over here now, you have to think about why. In other words, it's not him thinking I really need to strategize my time. It's not that. The animal soul is capable of thinking. So long as so far as to get what it wants, what it emotionally wants. And it's able to come up with terrific reasoning in order just to express its emotions, but not essential thought. So it's not think before you speak.
But sometimes the inclination is the thought is to say it, and you don't think it's
the question over here. Once again,
sometimes before you even
that's for sure you have to do. But the mechanism here is not an external one. It's a revelation of who you are. And subduing one's inclination is an expression of oneself. While we might think that bittul is limiting us, just the opposite. Bittul reveals us. Nullification reveals oneself. It's counterintuitive in a world in the Western culture which is led by the guiding light, quote unquote, of the animal soul, of the ego. What do you mean? If I have to subdue myself, why should I subdue myself? It's the opposite. I want to show everybody how big I am, how strong I am.
It also makes sense that if things aren't working out the way you want them to, how you react to it really defines your character. Like when things
well, it's a revelation of how you perceive things and which part of you is doing the perception.
Is it the animal or the God?
Exactly.
Like maybe Hashem doesn't want this for me.
Exactly.
It's a blessing.
Exactly. So the question is over here, just like we spoke about before, this woman who, at 95 years old, seemingly in her mind lost everything. That's it. I was a sports swimming instructor and now I can't. I was a painter and I can't anymore. And now I'm just stuck in this little room over here and I'm all by myself. Well, yeah, if you define yourself by what you have or you don't have, well, then you're going to have problems in life because life fluctuates. But an internal view of strength is, who is the I?
The younger you learn this, the better your life.
Oh, yes.
It's like a revelation.
You know how many times I hear... So when I first started giving these classes, you know how many times, especially here in Great Neck, you know how many times I heard from adults our age, if only I heard this 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So because of this, when I teach my 5th graders, my 6th graders, my 7th graders, 8th graders, I tell them, and I emphasize this, I'm going to tell you something that you need to remember for life. And I keep on putting these seeds. Remember, Mrs. Gazinski told me that she was doing they were doing the end of a year project on something, and she asked him, I want you to think about important things that you want to work on for life. And they open up their book, my notes. It's like, what is this? He says, this is all the things that Rabbi Osher told us. It's very important for life. So
Probably a whole notebook.
yeah, it's like literally from paper. No, that's them. But in other words, so this, you're right. The earlier we learn this, and we really learn this, the more agile we become, the more productive we become essentially. The healthier, the more grounded we become. The less we want to waste our time on stupidity.
I share whatever I learned to my son, and now he's listening.
So strange.
But whatever.
How do I charge for this information? We need to give back.
Exactly.
So many people are really, really lost in life. Like, meaning they spend thousands and thousands of dollars on like different, courses and all of that, which are all in the Torah, but like they don't know.
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You're lost because if you don't have the Torah, which is God's blueprint and it's a book of instructions for creation, for existence, then what's your GPS? What television tells you? What Trump or what Biden or what's your GPS? See, this world there's once you remove the God from the picture, then you could literally brainwash all of these kids in the name of social justice to hate God, to hate anything that remotely resembles morality, as though they're doing a favor to the world. And they waste precious time and energy and resources on what? On achieving what? Imagine you take that type of energy and you utilize it towards where God says.
I have a question though. Sometimes when applying things like this, there's also like the opposite side of the pendulum. No? When you feel like you don't have to give or help or anything.
Well, ladies.
I feel like there's an opposite end of this. It's like when you think that this is, the right intent, meaning like focusing only on what you need and nourishing only yourself without thinking about what needs to come of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why the Mishnah, and we learned this in chapter 2, begins with which path should a person choose for himself. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi answers, any path which is I can't say beneficial. I'm trying to figure it. It would beautify the person and beautify those around them. In other words, it's a balance.
Okay, that's
how do you know if your trajectory is a healthy trajectory? Does it bring harmony to those in your environment?
That's
Does it beautify the world? And if a person only focuses on the world, then, and we learned this, we had 4 class courses, Hillel's approach, if I'm not for myself, who am I? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? We learned this the first, like in chapter 1, several weeks ago. But yeah, how do you know if you're in the right path? Well, the right path is a balanced path. It's tiferet. On one hand, it's strength. It reveals your strengths. It allows you to channel your strengths, your abilities, your talents, and to be able to manage your weaknesses, etc., etc. On the other hand, that translates as either directly or indirectly through the trickle effect onto the rest of the world, specifically the world that you're in, your dalamos, your 6 feet around you. And so that's how you know. But a path which is so brilliant for me and so forth, but I don't care. What's the difference to me what happens around me? Let them fend for themselves. That's not healthy. We see what kind of... this is a whole course by itself, and we had this course, not here in Great Neck, but I gave this course before. Financials, the financial approach from the Jewish perspective.
Wow.
And what comes out of it, that Judaism is not capitalistic, nor is it social. Judaism takes into account the animal soul, which is where capitalism comes from, and socialism, or not socialism as the world made it, but socialism from the godly spirit. I'm here it can't just be about myself. It can't just be about my financial gains. Judaism is a synthesis. You can't discount the animal soul. Once you say, no, everybody's equal, nobody should get, the drive of the animal soul goes away, and nobody wants to pioneer, nobody wants to create. We need an eighth of the ego inside of us to motivate us. But at the same time, we need to know that my well-being has to be balanced with society's well-being. So I have to contribute to society. That's why the Torah tells us you have to give tzedakah, and you have to be this, because there has to be our holistic approach to our lives and our purposes in this world. Not just self-serving, or opposite is, it's all about the world. Forget about my own personal welfare. Forget about my family. That doesn't matter. I have to go and change the world. That's chaos.
That was Nahumash discussion about the stuff that we were talking about. Sparks of Chassidic in the bottom of saying that there has to be a balance between the physical world and the spiritual world.
Right.
It can't be either or, because that's too extreme. When you have the balance of both, that's the ultimate.
And we see that in the Torah. The Torah is there to reveal to us the reason for our soul's descent into this world, into the physical body. But at the same time, the Torah requires us to maintain a healthy physical disposition. In other words, literally work out. Eat a balanced, healthy diet. The Torah tells us this. To have work where we are obligated to show up day in, day out. At the same time, the Torah tells us it has to be kosher food, not just healthy food. There's a way to go to work. There are ethics in work, in which the way you could reveal God through the physical. There's time to daven, there's time to learn, there's time to work out. In other words, there has to be a holistic approach, physical and spiritual as one. Obviously, with the spiritual getting the overtone, setting the tone for the physical. So here we're seeing what's emerging from this is that hakovesh et yitzro, someone who subdues their inclination means any inclination. Does this inclination reveal the me, the true I? How do I know if it's revealing the true I? Again, the balance. If it's really good for me, for the true I, not for my ego. And number two is, how do I know? How does that come off to others around me? How does it affect those around me? So in the case of the mother who's like, yeah, look, you could do 100. Well, yeah, the mother, of course the mother wants the daughter to be good. And I don't even talk about the ego. Just a mother just wants, her father just wants the child to be happy and to be good and successful in life. But what does the child need right now? Validation. Empathy. So again, we're not talking about just subduing the evil inclination, even a good inclination. I remember hearing from Rabbi Wurzburg from Adar Torah telling me this is the first Mishnah I ever learned in Pirkei Avot was this Mishnah right here. Tells me Hakovesh Yisrael, even when you want to go and do a lot of miftzarim and you want to do a lot of this and take care of the world, you have to know how to filter that, and according to first and foremost where God positioned you, your family, yourself, and so on and so forth. In other words, you can't just like, I want to go and do this and this. It's great. But as a Rabbi, and we spoke about this before, as a Rabbi wrote to someone who wanted to join the Peace Corps to go and install water mains in Vietnam in the 60s, the Rabbi says it's a terrific idea. Tikkun Olam is great. But are the water mains in Brooklyn underneath your own buildings? They're all fixed that you now want to go to the world? First and foremost, as the Rabbi always teaches, teaches, think globally, but first and foremost, act locally. So, first local is the people that God gave you. That's local. Not just your vicinity, your shul members and your people, your classes. That's great. That's all very nice. Start from the, I think we spoke about this on Shabbos, or Farbrengen before Shabbos. I don't remember already. There's been a lot of Farbrengen the last few days. But someone came to the Rebbe, and in private audience, the Rebbe, he was bemoaning that he found himself in a chaotic, turbulent life. Not that he wasn't successful in life, but he found that there was too much friction all around. So the Rebbe asked him, do you join classes? Do you put down tefillin? Do you do this? He says, Rebbe, I'm not there yet to do these kind of things. So the Rebbe pulls out a piece of paper and a pencil. Says, he gives it to him. Says, I want you to draw a circle. So the guy draws a circle. But, drawing a perfect circle sometimes is nearly impossible. You could, but there's always going to be a... And then the Rebbe pulls out a protractor from his desk and gives the guy a protractor and says, now I want you to draw a perfect circle. And he did. He says, what was the difference between this one and this one? He said, well, this circle with a protractor emanated from the inside, from an essential point of the inside. And once that point is defined, now you could start building those circles all around it. But if it's not defined, then it's very hard. It's going to be jaggedy circles. It's not going to be perfect circles. In other words, your circle of influence, your circle of support, your circle of intimacy, like we spoke about the different, they're going to be jaggedy. There has to be an essential point. And the Rebbe says that's only through Torah and mitzvot. Not that the Torah and mitzvot define you. But the Torah and mitzvot allow you to tap into your essential self and reveal who you are. Essentially, a Jew is above the Torah. A Jew's origin emanates from exponentially higher level from the Torah emanates from. But the Torah is there to reveal to the Jew who they are. And reveal to the Jew how to bring who they are out to the world without being jaggedy all around. And so that in itself is what strength is. Strength emanates from within my essential point of me. Not from my muscles, from my political sway and this. That's all good, but that's not necessarily essential strength. How do we know? Because essence, by definition, doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't grow, it doesn't diminish. It's constant. And if it can diminish, if it can grow, if it's prone to fluctuation, it's not essential. If you want to know if you're truly strong, then it's not an external based definition. It's an internal frame of reality. Who you? Based on the you, that's your strength. Because if it could be taken away from me. When the previous Rabbi was arrested, he told the interrogator officers who attempted to break him physically, as the Russians or the KGB was masters at doing this, psychological and physical torture. Like he was purposely put in front of people and next to cells, hearing people being tortured and shot. He was put in poop. The rats were walking like. He was beat up, unconscious, over and over, thrown down the stairs. And that's just what's revealed. The KGB files came and painted a whole much more. But he told his interrogators once, you could arrest our bodies, but you can never arrest our souls. Because something that is prone to limitation, that could be arrested. But something which is infinite, how much strength would require to limit infinity? Nothing in the world. Nothing. Impossible. Hakovesh Yisro means someone who conquers their inclination. That's because, where does that conquering come from? If an external based strength is, I need to work out because my opponent, I know he could bench 300 pounds and I could do 250, so I need to push. If he could run 10 miles in half an hour, I don't know, whatever it is, then I need to do a minute less than he. But that could change. And that does change. And what about when it's snowing outside? Would you be able to run like that? No. You won't be able to. That traction is not there. So what? Are you less strength because of external conditioning? No. This is what Ben Zoma is teaching us. Strength comes from who you, from Hashem. Hashem is my strength. This is what Ben Zoma is teaching us. Next, the third point of reference, it doesn't say who conquers his inclination, but rather subdues the inclination. And this is such a powerful, powerful thought. You know how much anxiety people have walking around, quote unquote, knowing their proclivities and what's wrong with them, and therefore they got to constantly fight against themselves. So I need to conquer, and if I can't conquer my proclivity, that's why he says, no. Why? Because who gave this strength or proclivity to you? Wasn't it God? What, you managed to somehow create your own Yetzer Hara? If God created, you don't need to conquer. You need to subdue it, just like we subdue an ox in order for it to plow a field. One ox can outplow 100 men. In other words, you don't have to destroy the ox. Give it definition. Give it a purpose. If it was given to you, means there's one way or another you could utilize it. Definitely not in its sheer form, not in its raw form. But then again, as the Rabbi Akiva once told a Roman minister, when the Roman minister said to him, "You guys it seems that you're heretical against your God by encouraging Brit Milah, circumcision. You're going against God. God created your body according to what He wants. Why would you taper what God created?" He also says to him, by giving money to the poor that God made poor for a reason, you're going against God.
What was the response?
So to both, there was two different responses, but it comes out the same. To the second explanation, the second question was, and because the Roman minister gave an example. Suppose a Caesar arrests someone arrested and puts him in a dungeon, and he decrees upon this person that he shouldn't eat. And then somebody comes in and starts sneaking in food to this person. Isn't that treason against the Caesar himself? He said, well, while that might be true, but imagine it was a Caesar's own son. And the Caesar had to, out of principle, arrest his son. And out of principle, make an example. But in his hearts of hearts, wouldn't the Caesar want somebody to sneak food into his son? He has to do what he has to do. It's between him and his son. But he's hoping that someone will catch a drift and says, okay, this is a Caesar's son.
You loosened it.
You see strength? But so too, he says, when God makes somebody poor, that's the reason, but that's between the person and God. It's not up to you to explain why God made this poor person poor. It's up to you to help. And regarding the first one, the Brit Milah, he tells him, do you eat the wheat? I'm euphemizing. Do you eat the wheat in its raw state? Does anything that you have, do you eat the way it comes, or do you have to work on it? You have to mill it, you have to do this, and bring it from one state of potential state into actual state. So he says, God gave us a body that's uncircumcised, but anything in this world we need to work on. We don't need, and especially not from God's perspective, to conquer the evil inclination. but the inclination, but rather to subdue it. To subdue it from its raw, intense form, make it manageable in order to help this particular inclination reveal its essential reason for why God allowed it to come in the first place.
Is that iskafia?
That is iskafia. Impulse control.
This makes so much sense, but how come, like, this philosophy that you're bringing to the table, which is so beautiful, is, I feel like, not used, like, when it comes to even, like, disciplining, like, bad children. Like, even in schools, they say, oh, you know, your behavior is terrible, we can't have you in this school.
Well,
Versus,
here you just answered yourself right off the bat. Disciplining bad children.
well, I'm saying,
Well,
to
if,
them it's bad.
if the child is bad, you must discipline them, and you have to, like. But if you know internally he is good, and if he is screaming,
He needs more love.
he needs something.
You know, George's friend, actually, that he went to yeshiva with, like, from childhood, had behavioral problems, and at some point the yeshiva kicked him out, and he went to public, and his life was, basically, he's been in jail multiple times and is, like, a heroin user, and his life is done. But, and his sister,
In life, I'll tell you,
at this point,
there was.
he's institutionalized, like, he's always...
Let me tell you, there was a student in Hadar Torah back in the 70s. Hadar Torah is about Tshuva Yeshiva in Crown Heights, and because of that, it gets very interesting characters from time to time. Especially back in the 60s and the 70s, where, like, you know, the people were looking. So one of the students who came was a heroin addict. And he would come to Rabbi Goldberg's class, just like start passing out, and that was it. Like, for day in and day out, that's all he did. And at a certain point, Rabbi Goldberg wanted to, like, sit him out. So, like, you're just sitting over here. You're not doing anything. You're just, like, wasting your time. And the other rabbi spoke to him, and I believe it was Rabbi Vyshetsky. We spoke about him, like the guy who said last week, if it wasn't for your grandfather. So I believe it was Rabbi Vyshetsky who convinced Rabbi Goldberg, give him time. One day, this heroin addict woke up, and he didn't stop learning. Today, he's a senior shaliach.
Maybe you should meet this friend when he comes out of jail.
You can't imagine if someone goes that down, it's because they have the capacity
100%.
for greatness.
100%.
But that's the whole thing. If you, addiction,
Fills a hole.
and even in psychology, they teach the opposite of addiction is connection. Someone who has connection doesn't get addicted. But that connection begins first and foremost, as we've been learning in a relationship class, first and foremost to yourself. You should love your fellow as yourself. Means first and foremost, you need to know how to be aligned with yourself, how to show yourself empathy. In other words, my real self. Not base my life on my external self. Empathy digs deep within the real person. So someone who has that internal connection won't need external stimuli to subdue what happens from the external of oneself. We'll continue this tomorrow.